Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain. I've got an exciting episode for you. This is an interview with Brian Greene from Al's Place, the Quantum Leap fan site. I had a great time talking with Brian. Brian and I have spoken a couple of times before, and were even guests on the Quantum Leap podcast a couple of years ago for an episode about Quantum Leap related merchandise, which we actually talk a little bit about in the course of this interview. But I'd wanted to talk to Brian for a while, and we had certainly kind of circled around it a few times. But in light of the Kickstarter campaign, in order to help save the forums and whatnot, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to get him on the show and chat a little bit about that, as well as a few other things. So super excited to share this with you. I mean, Brian, of course, has been an institution in the fandom for over 20 years now, and has been involved with some incredibly important moments in the history of the fandom, and has made connections with fans like myself, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching and listening to this, as well as people who worked on the show and work on the show currently. So it was really, really just a joy to chat with him and learn more about him and his endeavors. And as someone who has literally visited that website since about the time it came online, it was just really cool. And it's something that I don't think, sitting in my crappy little apartment in Indianapolis, Indiana, when I was at university, I never really thought to myself, one day I'm going to talk to the person that started this website. But here we are 21 and a half years later or something like that. And sure enough, Brian and I are chatting about that site and the Quantum Leap revival as well. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. I also want to thank all of the new followers on Instagram, the new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you all so, so much. We're getting closer and closer to that goal of 500 subscribers on YouTube, and making our way also for the required number of yearly hours watched in order to kind of up the YouTube game a little bit. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do that, inserting links and such. For instance, when I talk about Al's Place, you'll get a clickable link down there and just click it and go to Al's Place. Just one of the many benefits, obviously, for the podcast, and something that can hopefully lead to bigger and better things. So thank you all so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. I also want to say thank you to all the patrons. Thank you so much for everyone over on Patreon. You're getting exclusive videos now, behind the scenes content with JJ Lindell, and the look at his design of the poster for Secret History is up and running. You're also getting early access to interviews. In fact, I actually recorded an interview earlier today that you will be getting exclusive first access to before it premieres on the YouTube channel, and that is with the one and only Caitlin Bassett. Caitlin was awesome, just luminous and illuminating and wonderful. I had such a good time talking with her, and I always do. She's a fantastic human being, genuinely, and I feel very, very fortunate to have gotten to know her a little bit through the course of doing this. So I look forward to sharing that with you. She answered a lot of really great questions, and not just from me, but also from all of you that pitched in on Instagram and Twitter, throwing some wonderful questions our way, some really great questions, or a couple of times when we both sort of paused and we're like, that's a really great question. So thank you all for that. Really appreciate the questions. And I look forward to doing more of that in the future. Certainly be getting in touch with some folks soon, and hopefully organizing some more interviews. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who supports the show, however you do support the show. Right now, there's so much going on in the world, and there's so many people out there that need help, and I would always encourage all of us to try to right some wrongs. So before you think about donating to this podcast, or any podcast for that matter, I hope you're looking around your community and you're able to volunteer your time, or if you're in a position to financially support some causes that are important to you, great. In the world at large, of course, I will always back the Trevor Project and Doctors Without Borders. The work that Doctors Without Borders is doing right now is incredible. It's very frightening for a lot of them, and I really just think anything we can do to show our support to Doctors Without Borders all year round, anytime, but especially right now with some of the things that the people that work for them are dealing with, it's pretty horrific. So give when you can, where you can, and if after all that you still have some money dangling around in your pocket and you want to throw it my way to help support the podcast, I will humbly accept it, and I am so grateful for it, and I'm still pretty much blown away by the fact that people want to do that, and I really appreciate it. It helps to keep the lights on. It helps to make improvements. It helps to make sure that I don't lose all of my files when a hard drive goes bad. So I just really appreciate it. And you can head over to Patreon, Fates Wide Wheel, to support the show. And thank you so much for that. And of course, there's going to be lots more really cool content coming your way. Exclusive stuff, opportunities for maybe some discounts in the future over at the Fates Wide Wheel storefront at Studio JJ. So yeah, some really cool stuff on the horizon as we kind of continue to grow and expand this thing that is Fate's Wide Wheel. This week is very exciting. Not only, of course, do I have the interview with Brian Greene, I also have the interview with Caitlin Bassett, and JJ Lindell and I will be doing a Doctor Who 60th anniversary episode talking about the classic series serial, The Daleks, as well as other just assorted Doctor Who stuff. But we're going to focus a bit on the Daleks because that is indeed the anniversary special that will be airing on November 23rd, a colorized 75-minute version, I believe it was. Our 85-minute version. I should have looked that up. Anyway, of the serial, which originally ran for like 170 minutes. That gives you an idea of how compact they've got it. Which, truth be told, there was some filler. Well, it was a different time. What are you gonna do? But I'm really interested in seeing that. I'm really interested in talking to JJ about that. So some really great stuff coming up this week, so keep your eyes peeled. Lots of wonderful stuff if you're here in the United States and you've got the holiday week, a few days off or something like that. There's going to be some cool opportunities to watch some extra Fates Wide Wheel content, and there's probably going to be a bit of an uptick in videos, just in general, as I look to expand the show and cover lots and lots of stuff, including the wonderful and amazing and incredible Quantum Leap and the cast and crew who've been so generous with their time, and the people who help to make this fandom go and grow. And Brian Greene is definitely one of those folks. So enough of this, enough of me. Let's get over to the interview with Brian Greene. I hope you enjoy it. I had a wonderful time talking with Brian. He's a great guy, and just had some really wonderful insights on the fandom and the show, and just his own story and his contributions. So I hope you enjoy this, and stick around afterwards for a few more little bits and baubles, I suppose. Take care. Hello, fellow travelers. I am thrilled to be joined by Brian Greene, who is the creator of the Al's Place Quantum Leap fan site, which, of course, has been a huge part of the fandom for over 20 years now. And I know I have certainly visited the site more times than I can count over the past 2 decades plus. And of course, I've had the opportunity to chat with Brian a couple of times before, and but never on Fate's Wide Wheel, oddly enough.
Right.
So I'm thrilled that we're getting the chance to do it. Brian, welcome to the show.
Too.
How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Now, one of the reasons for all this is there's a bit of cause for celebration because, I guess a few days ago there was cause maybe for a little bit of panic potentially. Do you want to explain to listeners and viewers kind of what was going on with the website and with the forums and kind of what came out of that?
Sure. Well, the forums, they've been online for 18 years with V-Bulletin, which we went to after whatever the one was before that. I can't even remember. It's been so long. But, we upgraded to V-Bulletin, and that worked out pretty well for a long time. But then along came Facebook and social media and all this other stuff. And it took took a lot of people out of there because Facebook is easy to use. You can you can do a lot of things with that and the other ones. But we're getting a server upgrade next year. And our person that runs the server, Morgan, who I think you probably know, said that our forums will not work after that because of the software technology. So, we kind of looked at it, and it's going to cost a couple $100 to upgrade it. And people, had kind of disappeared from those forums for a while now because of Facebook and all those other things. So I wasn't sure if there was even any interest in keeping it online at all to make it worth, spending a couple $100 on it. So I did a Kickstarter kind of out of the blue, and just, thought maybe people would put in $1 or $2, and it might take a couple of months. So I set it for 60 days. But I opened it, and within 3 or 4 hours, it was fully funded, and and great fans have been donating, a few dollars here and there, and some way more than a few. So we're up to almost triple what we asked for. So We're going to try to find out, ask online what people might want to do with some of that extra money. We're going to, probably save a little bit of it for future upgrades and things like that to keep it online, so that we don't have to ask anymore. But I'm really looking forward to this because it's supposed to be very user friendly. You can get push notifications on your phone. There's an app that you can download that'll make it easy too. And you can also go to your PC or your laptop or whatever, and it'll look great. We're trying to keep it the same kind of look that it has now because we want it to be familiar, but also updated, so that it's more fun and more people can talk and hopefully use it, and we'll see what happens there. But at least, at the bare minimum, we're not going to lose all those conversations, and people seem to really want to keep that. And, I did too, but of course, times change after 20, 25 years almost. It's great to see people kind of rally around it for the most part. So I'm pretty excited about that part.
Yeah, well, I honestly have to say that for me, the importance of the site and the forums specifically can't really be understated, just because, can't be overstated, because I feel like I used them as a reference so often, especially, while we were covering the classic series, because in particular with the classic series space on the forums, getting so many different opinions about the episodes from people that were using the forums 20 plus years ago was great. It was a wonderful opportunity to take people's own reviews from 2000, 2001, 2007, whatever, and kind of compare notes in a way which was extremely helpful. And it's absolutely true
Great.
that the forums and Matt Dale's Beyond the Mere Image were two of my best resources when we were charting the course of the original series. So as soon as I saw kind of the call, I was like, well, this is something that's got to be saved, because there's just a lot of important information. And I think more than anything, being able to have that snapshot of a fandom is incredibly important. And over the past few years, some of the the books that I've read on Star Trek, for instance, have relied so heavily on zines and things that the fandom was doing back in the 70s, and the fact that that's been preserved and can still be drawn on as these wonderful documents and source documents. I think that frankly, Al's Place and the forums serve a similar purpose for the Quantum Leap fandom. So I'm glad that everything's going to be a-okay, and even better than before, which is great. How does it feel to know, though, that not only were people wanting to support, obviously, but that I think that there are many of us among the fandom that do see the importance of the site and of the forums in particular?
That feels amazing. I started this out as just a little hobby on a personal website that I had, and it was just a little tiny section, and then people kept coming to it, and it was for my family mainly. It was like a Facebook. People used to do websites like Facebook on GeoCities, Yahoo GeoCities.
Right.
And so it's kind of that kind of thing. But then I noticed it was more than just my sister stopping by. So more and more people came, and people started sending me things, and I'd go look for stuff, and I'd put it online. And back then it was on, we were on dial-up, so you had to be careful about file sizes. You couldn't have anything huge. So I had all these, kind of downgraded files, and a lot of them are still on there. I put them all on YouTube last year, just to kind of update the site a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun. I've met so many people, friends, and I actually met them in real life, some of them. We did the convention back in 2009, and I was a big part of that. And so I got to meet a lot of those people, which was really cool. But online, I know so many people, and it's just been amazing how people have rallied around this lately. And it's good to bring in new people. I think the new forums may bring in some new folks that maybe will try that out because it's not so outdated. and user friendly and all that stuff. Because it is, I mean, it really is. It's 20 years old tech. So
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to work myself.
It, in a way, though, I think it's just a testament to the idea that even though the tech might be considered outdated, it's still so incredibly functional and still, I think, appealing, especially to fans of the show, because it's the same thing with like the Lurker's Guide for Babylon 5. You go to that website. That website I mean, in some ways it feels almost like a step behind Al's Place as far as the tech or whatever, but it's still such a valuable resource, and I think that that's what kind of keeps people driving to the site. I'm curious, you mentioned like new people kind of discovering it once the forums are upgraded, but over the past year and a half, 2 years, I would imagine that there's had to have been an influx of visitors just because of the announcement of the revival, and then of course now we're a season and a half deep into the revival. What was the state of things prior to the beginning of 2022 when the revival was announced? What did you see as far as traffic to the site?
There was not much. We would get 25 hits a day, still.
Yeah.
But I wasn't looking for a long time. I kind of stopped looking. I had a kid back in 2009, and so about 10 years went by where it was just a little bit of something here or there. There wasn't a lot of news, and people would stop by and say hi once in a while. And the forums, sort of slowly started degrading with people talking as Facebook opened, about that time. Sure. In 2008, 2009. So, yeah, but there wasn't a lot of traffic. But as soon as the new show hit, people started looking around for Quantum Leap stuff. And I noticed, I started looking at the traffic, and it started building and building and building. And then once we got the announcement that it was greenlit, people really started flooding in there. And, I'm sure a lot of other places too, but it was kind of neat. So I started updating the site. I went through the episode guide. I reorganized the whole thing, put everything in order, and added a lot of stuff to it. I put a lot of I put everything on YouTube. And so I put all those files in there, a lot of those files, and, TV guide stuff, anything that I had on other pages, I would kind of integrate it into the episode guide to make it a little more fun to read. So that was fun to do. Yeah. And now that, the kid's 14 now, so I got a little more free time than I did back then. But, it's just been a lot of fun. And, we've got the series 2 kind of sub-site in there now where it's got its own episode guide and its own pictures and videos and all that kind of thing. So I'm building on that. And it kind of has the look of the new series compared. I kind of made it look very similar to the original series main page.
Yeah.
But with the new series kind of colors and theme and all that sort of thing with Ziggy, and, instead of the hand cubes, you got the Ziggy, interface. But it still works like the old site. So I kind of wanted to keep that. I still use HTML, basic HTML to build that. So it does take extra time compared to other places.
Right.
But it's fun. It's been a hobby for, 23 years, going on 24. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to keep it going.
Well, it's incredible because I mean, I can remember visiting the site. I mean, very early. I mean, it had to have been in 2000, and I mean, prior to that, I think that there were maybe a couple of pages out there. There was, if I remember right, there was like one page that similar to what's on Al's Place that had like a lot of sound files or something like that. But that was about all that they really had. There was no other information. It was just a bunch of like random sound files, which was, I mean.
Right.
To some listeners or viewers of this, they might think to themselves like, well, why would you want that? You don't understand. Back in the 90s, like websites that had sound files from like TV shows or something, it was a big deal. And there were literally sites just devoted to like, I remember there was a Doctor Who site where it's like they had like every different TARDIS, materialization sound effect, on their page, but it was just a directory for sound files. There was nothing else.
Right. Yeah.
But mainly, the way that I had interacted with other fans prior to that, I think was through like the AOL forums. For Quantum Leap and to I mean I'm pretty sure that's like where I first heard about the the lost ending for the show and so just to kind of like have been a bit a part of things. I mean, to the point where like my old AOL handle had like QL in the in the name because I wanted to be identified as a Quantum Leap fan. But yeah, I mean, I could remember obviously going to the site in those early days and being in college, 2001, 2002, and, and visiting then, and so it's really cool to see what has been, kind of just an institution or something that's been in my mind for, since pretty much the beginning, and now kind of having, more traffic and also seeing the support, because it's just been an incredibly valuable resource. Speaking of which, at what point did you start to realize, hey, I've got a lot of stuff and information here, and I can publish this on the website, and I can put all this out there? Did it just happen kind of naturally, like slowly, or did you come to a point where you're just sort of like, well, I've got the website, I've got this stuff, I should just start putting it on there?
It came really slowly. The website started, I had a few sound files, it had a few tiny little video clips and some stuff about the Evil Leapers and just general, very small stuff. But I started adding stuff to it, and then I realized at one point that GeoCities was not going to hold this. So we got our own URL, and I called it quantumleap-alsplace.com. And because I wanted Quantum Leap in the title of it, but quantumleap.com was taken. So it kind of made it its own thing, but just started adding things, and I kind of redid the site. You can see the actual original site from Al's Place. If you look, there's a button on the main page at the very bottom that says versions, and you can see the original site and how kind of cheesy it was back then. But kind of came up with a logo and have kept that. And didn't want to change it. I changed the font a little bit last year just to update it with a better. We used to use the Swiss cheesed font, and now it's String Theory, I think, which was a little sharper and nicer looking. But it's just been little by little, and 23 years later, it's probably the largest Quantum Leap fan site in the world, I would say.
Yeah.
So,
without a doubt,
there's some other great ones. The Quantum Leap wiki is very handy to use. They have a lot of stuff on there, and there's all kinds of screen cap sites and all these great sites, and of course the podcast sites. When I started disappearing, the podcast started taking over, and I was so excited to watch you guys and the Quantum Leap podcast. And I'm doing one kind of regular with Damon Sugamelli and some other guys from back in the day, Mike and MJ. Yeah. So we've been having some fun with that. So it's just been a ride.
I recently, Damon recently mentioned actually that he was hoping to do even more in the future, which is exciting too. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like especially having been the curator of this almost like online museum for a while? I mean, now it's not, right? It's kind of active and thriving again because of the revival series, but being kind of that curator, have you felt like any pressure or maybe burden's the wrong word to use, but of responsibility to carry this on and to keep it alive? Or has it's just something you've always wanted to do?
Well, I've always wanted to do it. It's always been a hobby. But yeah, after this many years, I almost feel like there is a responsibility to keep it going. And, I got to thank Morgan, because he has been our server for so long and kept us online all this time, years and years and years. So he's a great guy.
Shout out to Morgan.
Yeah, he makes these amazing hand links that I can't afford, but I would love to have one.
Yeah. Very true.
Maybe I need to do a Kickstarter for my own hand link. I don't know how that would work.
I mean, I've seen people do Kickstarters for vacations before. So, I mean, if they can, go to Aruba, you might as well be able to get a hand link.
That'd be amazing. But no, yeah, this long, I never would have imagined anything like this. So yeah, it's just been amazing. And thanks to everybody that's watching and supporting and coming to the site. It's not anything where you have to give me credit. If you take something from it, it's there for everybody. And that's the way I want it. I want fans to come together and just have fun with it. That's the point.
Well, I mean, I love that. I mean, I think you do, obviously you deserve a lot of credit. And I, one of the things that I always made sure to do in the early days is like, if I was using something from the forums or whatever, I certainly mentioned where I got it from, in that instance, because I think the other thing that's really cool too, is that, we've got these wonderful resources that are available to us, whether it's Matt's books or your site, or, even, just a commenter on a Reddit thread, or, wherever it might come from. And it's a good reminder to the fandom that these conversations are happening, and that there are places where you can go and you can see, I mean, there's stuff on your website that is from, like, the 90s, like, TV guide ads, for instance, or, whatever. And I think that type of stuff is, it's important. It's essential. It's a resource that, when you have these questions about a show that was obviously, airing pre-internet, to be able to have that type of stuff is incredibly important, and I mentioned this the other day, which the book is still sitting in the same location, but there's a Twilight Zone book, for instance, sitting next to me. And I just love the fact that there's all this great information from, 60 years ago that's still available, and it's due to the preservation efforts of people. And I mean, you certainly are one of those people, that's helped to preserve this information. What was it about the show, that drew you in, that attracted you to the show initially?
Well, I was 13 when it aired, and I remember just thinking it was really cool about the time travel stuff. I was a big Back to the Future fan, and some of the other time travel shows like that, and so that just general time travel theme drew me in. But then, the characters and how they interacted, and the lessons that were taught in that show really kind of makes you who you are eventually, if you will, in a way. And a lot of other things, but just the whole theme and how they interacted and the purpose of the leaps was a real draw. And I think for most people could say that too. And even in the new series, they're keeping it going pretty well. New characters, new themes, new everything in a lot of in a lot of ways, but the theme is still there, to set right what once went wrong. So everybody's got a wrong in their life they'd love to set right. So some of these people in the characters get to do that. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think that one of the things that's incredible about the show, incredible about the passion of fans of the show, especially those of us that have been fans since the classic series, is that you can't help but develop this very personalized connection with the show. And as we've matured, especially those of us that did start watching the show when we were kids. I mean, as I famously say, I was 7 when I watched the pilot, the Genesis, and so and watching the show, not missing many episodes during first run. Like, I missed a few here and there, but watching the show for those, those years, those formative years. And when the show went off and I think it was 10 or 11, the years since then, and just maturing, the way that the show has stuck with me, not only with those life lessons, but also kind of understanding the true importance of being able to kind of right those wrongs, and having, that take on a very personal nature, especially when it comes to like Sam's relationship with his family, and, obviously the leap home being a big part of that. And here we are, a week before Thanksgiving. It's only natural, I suppose, to talk a little bit about an episode like that. So I completely understand that. With your involvement, with the fandom and through the website, and then obviously, taking part with the 20th anniversary convention and everything, at what point did you start meeting people? I mean, obviously you were meeting fans, but at what point did you start meeting people who were involved with like the production of the show?
I met a few of the actors through the, I brought them onto the forums. We did some chats and, internet chats, where they just typed, which was interesting back then. And then with the convention, though, I started really meeting a lot of people and contacting them and talking to them on the phone and emailing and all that kind of thing. That was cool. That's where I met Deborah, who has just been amazing to all of us. I know. She is the biggest force there is, probably, to keep it going. She's the biggest fan, I would say. But she was always great to me. And, at the convention, it was wonderful to meet her and talk to her and see how excited she was about just everything Quantum Leap, and still has been. Fought years for this to get what we wanted. So, but a lot of the other actors, I mean, there was 50 of them, and then and producers and writers. We had all kinds of comic book people. Julie Barrett that wrote the A to Z novel was there, and
Yeah.
so
It's
yeah,
literally right in front of me right now, actually.
right, yeah. Everybody had that book,
Right. I had 2 copies because my first copy started to fall apart.
right, yeah. I want to meet Matt now though, because of the books. Man,
Right.
those books are amazing. Like if you
Yeah.
don't have that book, you're missing out. You gotta get your hands on a copy.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you mentioned that, like this happened off mic, but Deborah and I were chatting right after our the last episode that she did with me, and we were talking about something, and it was about trilogy actually, and she couldn't recall what it was, and I couldn't recall what it was, and we literally both were just sort of like, "Hey," and picked up Matt's book.
Pick the book up.
and I flipped to the trilogy section, and and it was like, oh, there it is.
There it is.
Because I mean, the work that he's done is I mean, not to overstate it or anything, but it's heroic. It's it's essential. Yeah, it's essential to the fandom, and I would argue that that's exactly where I would place Al's place too. It's essential to the fandom because I think that there's a certain continuity, with a site like Al's place being able to stretch back to. I mean, it's when it started. We're only 6 years removed from the show going off the air, right?
Yeah.
So it's that connective tissue to that time when the show was actively on the air to shortly afterwards, all the way through to today. And I think that continuity is incredibly important. I don't know how many different ways I'm going to find to say that over the course of this chat, but I feel like it's true. Meeting all of these people, obviously Deborah aside, but who are some of your favorite people to interact with, and that you got to meet along the way that have been involved with the classic series?
Well, I mean, obviously Scott Bakula, he was amazing to do that with. He joined in a year in advance, which was probably unheard of for him at the time. But that was amazing. He was a really nice guy. We had set him up to sign autographs, I think, for an hour. Maybe just a hair longer, but he stayed until every single fan had an autograph, which was at least 3 hours, maybe more. It was a long time, but he was that was amazing. And Richard Hurd, he was a lot of fun. I actually had met him a time or two before he flew into somewhere where I used to live, and I met him at the airport, and we hung out for a little bit. And he gave me a set of the wings that the kids in Future Boy wear in that birthday party scene. So I've got that sitting around here somewhere.
I remember you mentioning that on that episode of the Quantum Leap podcast that we did, because we were talking about
right. I had
stuff like that. Yeah, that's so cool. I love that he, kind of in a way got a little bit of a shout out in the latest episode with the Future Boy comment that that was great.
I heard that and I was like, yep, they did that on purpose.
Oh yeah. When Drew told me that initially they were hoping to actually like have some of the episode, like one of the the episodes actually airing on a TV or something, I was like, oh, that would have been amazing. But of course, the big one of the big issues is, and I know that people have talked about kind of like the Forrest Gump thing with trying to bring certain elements of the classic series into the revival, is that footage was was shot in standard definition for television over 30 years ago. It's not going to be super easy or or very cost effective to try to bring that stuff forward. But that said, it would have been pretty damn cool.
It would have been damn cool.
Yeah.
I wish they would go into the old project in New Mexico and for some reason have to explore that. A lot of people want stuff like that. And I saw somebody mention the other day, what if they leap back and young Sam Beckett was there, that would be kind of neat. So there's all kinds of stuff they could do with it. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things too, is it's just time, right? I mean, the first season I think was all about kind of as they've been, I think, much more open about recently, which is great. But I'd had off the record conversations about this a year ago that they were telling somebody else's story for the most part. The creative team was not necessarily really telling the story that they had that they would tell, and now they're getting the chance to do that. And I think that going forward, I mean, there's every likelihood that if we, which I'm cautiously optimistic that we will, if we get a season 3, I really think that we could start to see some exploration of a lot of that, and certainly season 4, season 5, who knows how long, but like there's all sorts of things that we could see, including maybe Scott coming
Come
in
on,
and,
Scott.
right?
Let's do it.
So I mean, obviously, I mean, yeah, I can imagine that those guys in particular would be a lot of fun. And I mean, Richard Hurt always seemed like such just a kind individual, and I always loved him in anything that I saw him in.
Oh yeah, Seinfeld, anything. He was very, very
Yeah.
funny.
But as far as your experience with the show, you said you were 13 watching the show. What were some of the episodes that really like stood out to you, like early on, that are like, this is great stuff? I don't necessarily know why, maybe, but this is great.
I always loved Starcrossed, the second episode.
Okay, yeah.
Right from that, I love that. Of course, the leap back was exciting because you got to see, the
Yeah.
future and all of that stuff. Kill anything with the future in it, killing time. Which another reason I like this show, you get to see the future sometimes too much. But you get to see it, what's going on and how that's working for them also. I always wondered, what is Gushy doing? What's Tina,
Right.
all these guys, what are they really doing back there? So that was kind of neat to see. But the Leap Home was a great one. Good grief. I love so many of them. MIA was probably one of my favorites. Al's performance in that was, Dean Stockwell. I know he hated doing it because he liked to be funny, but he was so good in it. I could probably name off 50 that are my favorites.
Well, I'm in the same boat, honestly. It's interesting how some of it's shifted, though, because I know that when I was younger, like Starcrossed, Leap Back, like those were definitely amongst my favorites. And now I don't know that they would even make my top 10. Just because I guess that my perspective has shifted a little bit, but obviously Leap Home would always be, in fact, I remember when we did kind of our, best of or essential episodes list, we purposely decided to leave Leap Home and MIA off because it's just like, it goes without saying that those, that's classic stuff. But I'm curious because this is something that I always wonder about, especially in the fandom, between Leap Home Part 1 and Leap Home Part 2. Which one do you prefer?
Part 1.
Yeah.
Yep. I got to go with Part 1. I liked Part 2.
I understand.
I like the end of it and everything. And the end was shocking too, because you're like, oh, your heart with Al, it could have been free and all of that stuff. But the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, I mean, the Leap Home Part 1 is just a very important episode to me for many, many reasons. And I think, growing up, I connected to it. And especially when I was in high school, being a similar age to Sam, the young Sam at the time, like I connected to it in a very different way. And then after my mom died, it was just, it took on a whole new complexion. And I love that episode dearly. But for some reason, over the past 5 or 6 years, it's shifted to where I appreciate Leap Home Part 2, I think, even more. I just think there's something about it. It feels so big. It feels very different from anything else that they really did in a lot of ways, in a good way. Not Lee Harvey Oswald way, which I certainly developed, I think, some issues with. At the time, I loved it, right? Like, I mean, it was like, this is so cool. But now looking back on it, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. But I think that's one of the things that's kind of amazing about the being a fan of the show is the format lends itself to kind of rediscovery because of the way they're able to sort of genre hop and the way that they're able to tell all these different stories.
And they could do all kinds of spin-offs of this and movies. And I think Deborah has probably spoken about that and what she wants to do eventually. I hope she gets to do it.
What would you like in an ideal world if NBC Universal was just gonna throw all the money and all the airspace or streaming space at the show? What would sort of the Quantum Leap cinematic universe, so to speak, look like to you?
That's a tough question. I mean, you would have an Evil Leaper series, where you saw that side of it, and maybe they would cross over, like they did on the WB shows a while back, and stuff like that. But I mean, you could just do so many things. You could go back in different eras, although Ben's about to leap back into who knows where. In about 3 weeks, so we'll see how that works. But you could do different eras and different you could go way into the future and who knows. But movies would be would be good, like a standalone movie here or there, or even a trilogy or something like that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you could sort of connect them all into a Quantum Leap cinematic universe, which would be very crazy and interesting.
Yeah.
But,
One of the things that, because I've always been a little, I think, skeptical of the idea, and not because I wouldn't enjoy it, I'm sure, but there's been this thought, like, how do you pull it off? How do you do it? Luckily, that's above my pay grade. I don't have to worry about that. But, as certainly as I've warmed to it, and of course heard Deborah's passion about it, it started to kind of manifest itself in interesting ways in my head. For instance, one of the things that I mentioned, I can't remember if this was in the interview or if I said it right after we were over. But I think I told Drew, I was like, look, I just want the Hannah Carson spinoff series now. Like, I want to know what Hannah's up to when Ben's not around,
sure.
because she's a fascinating character, and Eliza is fantastic. But I think that's true of so many, characters throughout the course of Quantum Leap. And it would be fascinating to be able to kind of like revisit some of those characters. And you could do it in a very sort of anthological sort of way, right? Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't even have to involve a leaper. It wouldn't have to involve Quantum Leap. But just imagine if we were able to like revisit some of the characters from the classic series just in that sort of 45 to hour long format, telling a story about their lives, post Sam Beckett. It's something, again, that I've become less and less skeptical of, as time has passed, and the idea that something like that could exist would be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool.
As far as the revival series goes, when it was announced, what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts when I read the description was, this is fake. I did. I thought it was something someone made up, or just to, how they do. But
right.
The more I read into it and found out more about it, I was like, well, this might be interesting, and it is. And now that we've gotten into it, there's a lot of changes that they made. There's no waiting room. Ziggy doesn't talk. All that kind of things. He can leap outside his lifetime. But I kind of look at it this way. In the original series, you saw technology advance in different ways. First, Al saw Sam as the host, and then later, all of a sudden, you could see Sam as Sam. And then you had Ziggy was a he, and then all of a sudden a she, and now it's an it. Probably a different machine, but that's for another time. But there were upgrades as you went along, and it's 30 years later. So there's, of course, going to be more upgrades, and they're going to figure out other things, and they're going to reprogram things. So now maybe Sam was limited by his own programming. Maybe he could have done it all along, and maybe he's doing it now. Who knows? Because, at the end, he's in charge of his own leaps. So,
right.
Who knows?
Well, and that's one of the things that in O Ye Little Faith that I kind of enjoyed is that, when Ian has the line, they say that, Sam Beckett thought that God, was in charge of the leaps or whatever. And I think that it's interesting to realize that, the awareness and the appreciation, obviously, of the classic series exists. I know some people are a little critical at times, hypercritical, and think that it doesn't, but it's clear that the awareness and appreciation exists by the writer's room. But yeah, I mean, it's the opportunity to take something in a different direction and to build upon what came before. And the wonderful thing is it's not like they've made it a sweeping statement about saying like Sam was wrong about that, for instance, or whatnot. It's interesting to me too, because there's so many things that I think that we can't know for sure, but I know that the majority of fans of the classic series have long held that Sam is now leaping as himself, right? Mm-hmm. Like post Mirror Images leaps as himself. On the last interview I had with Deborah flat out said, no, he's still leaping into other people.
Uh-huh.
Now, until it actually happens on screen, right? Like, we can't necessarily know. But let's face it, if Deborah Pratt says that that's what's happening, I'm going to probably be like, oh, okay, that's what's happening.
You're going to go with that.
Right. So I think that, I think you're right. I think that things change and things evolve, and the preconceived notions that we come, and the baggage that we kind of carry into the new show can certainly affect our enjoyment of it. And, for me, I've really tried my best, and this is the approach that I took when we reviewed the classic series, to let go of any preconceived notions, and it was
Yes,
tough. It was very tough,
very
especially when we
hard.
got to, when we got to episodes that I held in high esteem, right? And I would watch it and it would disappoint me. And I'd be like, what happened? Like, I thought I loved this episode. And now I'm sort of like, this was not a good episode of Quantum Leap. So it could be difficult, but it's definitely it's worth doing because there's so much to appreciate about the new show.
Oh yeah.
um we've seen legacy characters obviously in Beth, and we've got Magic, obviously played by a different actor. Who are some of the other legacy characters that you would be eager to see in the revival series?
I got to see Carolyn Seymour. They've already brought up they've already brought up the Evil Leapers, and I got to tell you that storyline wasn't my favorite, but it was
Sure.
interesting, and they brought it in. First season, I couldn't believe it. So if we
Yeah.
don't get a Carolyn Seymour cameo somewhere or a whole episode, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because like the notion of the evil leapers, I feel like right, like they've already name dropped it, and we saw in a way a variation of that with Martinez in season 1. But now I think that there's definitely the opportunity to do some exploration there. I'm curious with the new series thus far, kind of in the same vein of talking about the classic series. What have been some of your favorite episodes so far?
Of the new series,
Mm-hmm.
I really liked "Oh Ye of Little Faith." I
Yeah.
liked the pilot. I thought the pilot was fun.
Mm.
Even though the graphics, they had some work to do on some of the tech, but they got it, and now we're getting a lot more hologram effects. That was one of my complaints at first. They really weren't doing any, but
Yeah.
we got I think our first walk through the wall with Tom this past
Right.
week, so that was that
Yeah.
was kind of fun. To pick a favorite, I mean, I really liked Judgment Day. Even though it
Sure.
was,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on, and probably some fans got really confused with some things there. I read a lot of different things on that, but I
Right.
liked it. It was fun. But I liked Let Them Play. I thought that was a really um, touching episode. We
Yeah.
got some transgender stuff in there that we had not seen a whole lot of before, and they really do touch on a lot of social issues. Sometimes
Yes.
they get a little too much into it, where it's almost preachy, and you don't want to do that too much, because it kind of takes away from what's going on. But I love all the themes, and I want them to keep doing that and really get it into a leap where it's just solid, and it's not just kind of thrown into the side for a second. Um, but I love it. I
Yeah.
just love it, and I'm all in. And I know a lot of people call it names and things like that, and I hate that, because
Yeah.
other people deserve to be represented in this. This is the kind of show where you can do that, and you should do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's my way of looking at it. So I appreciate it, all of it.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that that's another great parallel with something like Star Trek. I know that community, that fandom, there's been a lot of division over, the past decade or so with, the representation and inclusivity that we've seen, with some of the newer shows. But the truth of the matter is it's like, you go back even to Next Generation when it was premiering, and the debates among fans, and
Yeah,
I mean, there was like a letter writing campaign to Paramount in the early days, even before the show had aired, basically saying like, if Spock's not on it, we're not watching. And when I say letter writing campaign, we're talking about thousands of letters that were
right.
delivered, with this threat. So I think that it's just kind of that byproduct, right, of any time that you have this passionate fan base. I mean, some people are going to just hold a little tighter to things than others
For
are, and then
sure.
of course there's the very real fact that we live in a world where prejudices exist and bigotry is a thing, and it has little to do with the passion you might have for this show or this piece of entertainment that you so dearly love, and more to do with your own preconceived notions. But
Yes, sir.
yeah. But I mean, I agree. I think that one of the things that I've loved so much about the second season, I mean, I was a huge fan of the first season, and I think I was just so excited to see Quantum Leap back, and the way that they were, choosing to tell stories. And I could tell, there were definitely some things that along the way that I was, I wasn't as enthused by as I was others. But this season, I mean, has just been such a huge leap, pardon the pun, over last season. And I think the quality of the writing, the quality of the acting, everything that we're seeing, has been a bump up, and it's been exciting to kind of see where they're going. So I look forward to what's next.
There really is. I like the Hannah storyline too. I want to see where this goes because, I read and heard that she's not going to be a leaper at all,
Yep.
and is just going to progress with the leaps at somehow or another. So that's going to be really interesting to see why and what's going to happen there. So I'm very excited about that, and I love the kiss.
Yes.
At the end of the last one.
Yeah, I thought it was so great. I mean, that whole scene, from her calling him future boy to, you ask me any question, I'll ask you one question, what's your name? I mean, that whole thing was just so lovely, and I thought it was so incredibly well done. I know obviously we're going to see more of her, and I cannot wait to kind of see where they take things. Because it does. I mean, there's a big question, right? Of how are they going to keep meeting up, right? What does that mean?
And she's going to get older and older and older,
right?
So the romantic thing, what's going to happen with that? That's kind of what I'm wondering too.
Yeah.
Because if they bring her up to project time, what is she going to be, like 80? Or older?
Yeah, I mean, I think because if she was, early 20s in 49, then she would have been born in the late 20s, mid to late 20s. So she'd be almost 100 years old. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's definitely some things coming, and I think that episode 208 in particular, Nomads will. It'll raise a lot more questions, based off of what little I know, but in good ways, in very good ways. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where it all goes, and I'm thrilled. I mean, obviously there is still, frankly, some question as to whether or not the agreement will be approved. But that said, I'm just thrilled with the fact that we're going to get these 5 more episodes, and they're going to start. They're going to start shooting soon, and now it's just a matter of when they're going to tell us that season 3 has been announced, renewed.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
The one of the things that I think that Al's Place does so well is kind of catalog a lot of the merchandise that's been released through the years, and we haven't necessarily gotten a ton compared to other genre shows, obviously.
That's true.
No action figures.
Yeah, a lot of it's fan made. Some of it, there's some salt and pepper shakers out there that I know aren't official.
Right.
They're cool.
It's the same thing with like some of the mugs. Like I know some of the mugs were like actual like licensed stuff, but then you see some of them and you're just sort of like, that's not real. No. But out of the merchandise, I am kind of curious. Like, what's been your favorite thing? Like the tie-in media, like the comic books or the novels, or some of the behind the scenes stuff. What would be kind of your favorite piece of merchandise?
I love the comics. I'll just say that there's a whole section, of course, on the site that's about the comics, and you can actually read them all and see all the pictures and everything. But I love the comics. The novels, yes, I do love the novels. I've read all of them. It's been a long time, so don't have to be taxed. But yeah, I've read them all, and so all of those kind of tie-in things were my favorites. Other than shirts and the DVDs when they came out. We actually partnered with Universal when those came out, and we did a giveaway of a set or two of those, so that was kind of fun. It's the first time I ever got to work with Universal.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I think that, the opportunity, obviously, that you've had to work in some capacity with both the people that worked on the show and then obviously with Universal and stuff as well. I mean, that's just a further endorsement, again, of kind of the importance of, the work that you've done. And I've loved the fact that even in this new era of the show, that kind of experience has continued in a lot of ways, because I know the experience that Matt has had, obviously, with some of the folks who work on the show and the use of his book by people who work on the show. show, and
Yeah,
endorsement
that's
by Deborah
amazing.
and all that is huge. And seeing like somebody like JJ Lindell, who I recently partnered with Fates Wide
His
Wheel. And so
posters are
JJ, like,
amazing. Yes, and I love the
yeah.
new logo. Yeah, it's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think that seeing that has also been really cool because you hear all the time about Star Wars, Star Trek, etc. That it's not quite as friendly, in that way, and
Mhm.
to be able to have those positive experiences with, the folks that are responsible for the creation, the production of the show and stuff has been really, really great. I think for the community and for the fandom, and I mean it's been mutually beneficial too, right? Because I think the
Oh
more that
yeah,
the fans feel seen and feel heard, the more engaged that we are.
yeah.
It's
I
a little
remember
different, I suppose.
in the first season, you could go down and you could see something that, for instance, Raymond Lee would post on Instagram, and other people would comment and say congrats or whatever, and he would go and give them hearts and even
Yeah,
comment on a lot of them. I mean,
yeah,
most actors won't do that. Caitlin Bassett was doing. All of them were doing it, which was great. And you got the producers doing it every once in a while. I'll see, Martin Garrow like something that I post or retweet, or one of those guys do it, which is really cool to see.
yeah.
Someone, I can't tell who it is because they wanted to remain anonymous. But when I
Sure.
first opened that Kickstarter, we had $40, and within a few minutes of someone messaging me, they funded the whole thing themselves. And they were very close to the new series. Um,
That's
so
awesome.
that was unbelievable and amazing. And
Yeah.
it just goes to show you how all those guys work together and support the fandom and all of
Right.
that. So it's just amazing what they do.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the neat things is that they have not forgotten their feeling, because I mean, some of the folks that are involved with the show are, you know, very big fans of the classic series.
Yeah,
Derek Hughes, for instance, he's a writing partner with Benjamin Rabb, and they wrote Paging Dr. Song and One Night in Koreatown, and I mean, he's a huge fan of the classic series, and has so much respect for Deborah Pratt and everything, and just kind of like,
yeah,
seeing the love and the enjoyment that they derive out of being able to work on a show that that they loved is really, really cool. And I think that that's also the neat thing about the work that like you've done, and the work obviously that Quantum Leap podcast and Matt Dale's done, the work that I'm doing and stuff like that, is it's like, there's a great deal of enjoyment and validation out of the fact that there is so much engagement from the people working on the show, but at the same time there's a great deal of validation knowing that we're helping to kind of support the show in our own small ways, or in some larger ways than others, and that carries all the way back to the classic series, and kind of just keeping that alive, right?
yeah.
And I think in this day and age, right, it's only natural, because anywhere you look, there's some sort of fandom that's still alive. Cartoons that lasted 13 episodes, or have podcasts and
They
whatnot.
have
So,
their own right.
um, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I'm kind of curious. We talked a little bit about this, but as far as the future of the website goes, I mean, I'm sure as long as long as the show's around, as long as you're around, the website's going to be around. But I'm curious as to what you might have in mind. If there's any tweaks or upgrades or anything that you see for the series, or do you kind of enjoy the fact that it does have a little bit of a time capsule feel, as well as providing very up to date information?
Right. I love the time capsule feel. I think a lot of people would love to keep that,
Yeah.
keep that going. So I'm going to keep doing it that way for
Nice.
now, but and preserve it that way. But I do like doing the new stuff in the old style, which is kind of fun. So
Yeah.
I hope people like it. And immediately following the episodes, I always upload the episode guide page with all the information. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. 1 minute after it airs, but like major ones. Um, but I love the podcast. I love how everybody kind of works together in a way. We're all um, friends, and nobody's bad mouthing the other ones like you see in some fandoms. That's amazing. That really is, because
Yeah.
you see a lot of different terrible things in some of the other ones, but in this one you really don't.
Yeah.
It's great to kind of share and talk to everybody and know what's going on. It's fun. It's like the old days.
I think overwhelmingly we've been really lucky as a fandom. I mean, I know that there's definitely there's been that contingent, certainly that has not warmed to the revival series, and has
Sure.
taken
Yeah.
issue with certain aspects of the revival series that almost make you question whether or not they were paying attention to the classic series. But
Yes. Yes, indeed.
all that said, I think overwhelmingly, there has been so much positivity, and I feel the same way. I think that that's one of the coolest things about the opportunity to work with Quantum Leap podcast and share some of those interviews, and and have people on the show, and it is indicative, I think, of just kind of what we all learned right from the classic series. So
Oh yeah.
we're all Quantum Leap kids. But no, that's great to hear, and I mean, I look forward to being able to visit the site for a very long time. And one of the things that I have not actually done, partly because all of my reviews that I'm doing right now, I'm usually recording before the episode airs in order to to drop the episodes immediately afterwards. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go back and do some sort of capsule reviews, retrospective reviews of the new series, and to do like I did with the classic series, go to the forums and see what people were saying. And it'll be interesting, I'm sure. I know that some of the Facebook stuff has been interesting, to be sure. But
yeah, yeah, you're right. Sometimes I look at the screen and I'm like, "Did you watch the original show?
right,
Did you?"
yeah. If you to the Fates Wide Wheel listeners and viewers out there, if you were to kind of sum up your experience with Quantum Leap and what you can hope for the future, not only for Al's Place but just for the fandom in general, what would you say?
Oh, yeah, you caught me off guard on that one. Well, my experience has been overall just unbelievable. I never would have thought again that I would be still doing this after 23 years, and still be a fan at since I was 14. That's unbelievable. All the people that I've met and that have helped me and donated stuff to the site, and when we did the episode guide, people adopted an episode, and a lot of that stuff was by individual fans that did that. And when I redid it, I kind of consolidated a lot of that. But their names are still on there and all their information is still on there. I just added a lot to it over the years that we've learned since then. Stuff has come up. But as it's gone on, I can't say enough. I want it to keep going. I don't plan on stopping at any point anytime soon. Unless I just can't type anymore. HTML is a lot harder than some of the newer stuff, but I still like doing it that way. So
yeah. Well, I'm grateful, honestly, Brian. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your work, and and obviously grateful for Morgan as well, as you mentioned earlier, and keeping the lights on, so to speak, the blinking lights, if you will. And I think that to be able to have that repository is incredibly important to the fandom, and I'm grateful for that. And I was happy to be able to support the Kickstarter, and happy to see it be so incredibly successful. And and I look forward to what's next.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you back on again sometime. Maybe we could get into the specifics of an episode or something like that.
Anytime.
But this has been a real pleasure, and I'm so glad that you could join us. So take care, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
There you have it, the interview with Brian Greene, the creator of Al's Place, the Quantum Leap fan site. Thank you so much, Brian. I really, really appreciate you coming along, and I look forward to having you back on to talk about more assorted things. I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that we can mine and go in a little deeper on, but this was great to just kind of get an overview, understand the nature of the Kickstarter and where you might want to go with the website from here on out. I appreciate the retro stylings of the website so much. I'm sure there are a lot of people that do, and for newer fans, for people that are so used to kind of having these conversations communications via other social media platforms, especially these days with the stuff that happens on like TikTok and Instagram, and Reddit and that sort of stuff. It's really great, I think, for new fans to be able to see these sites, because there's something about it that it kind of ties into an earlier time. And we talked a little bit about it in that interview, and just the fact that, as I was a teenager and the internet was really kind of just in that infancy phase in a lot of ways. We had like bulletin board services and forums on like Usenets and you had Prodigy and AOL and all all these other things. And even when you talk about like GeoCities and I mean, so many people, the first website they ever created was with HTML on GeoCities or something like that. So it's really cool to be able to see the way that we celebrated these shows and the way that we communicated about these shows in those, early days of the internet. And I think that there's so much value in a site like Al's Place, or, I mentioned like the Lurker's Guide with Babylon 5. There's so much value in these sites and so much importance over the information that's been collected there, stored there, and continues to kind of be curated there. And, I used that word very specifically because in a way, Brian is kind of like this curator of this internet museum of quantum leap stuff. And the fact that it's there and can be shared and can be seen, and we can learn so much about the show. It's Matt Dale and I have talked about this before. I have this podcast. I've talked to all of these people involved with the show. I've talked about the show for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But the truth of the matter is, I don't consider myself necessarily to be an expert on Quantum Leap. I mean, I certainly know things about the show that some of the average viewers might not know or whatever. But there are people out there that just know so much, that have that information kind of at their fingertips. And one of the places you can get that information is something like Al's Place, or of course Matt Dale's wonderful books Beyond the Mirror Image, which you can purchase over at lulu.com, or if you go to just forevertv.co.uk. Matt doesn't even know I'm doing that. I just want to do that because the books are amazing. They're incredible. They're essential if you're a fan of Quantum Leap. And Matt's a lovely fellow and deserves all the support in the world. And you can also back the third volume of Beyond the Mirror Image right now over on Kickstarter. There's some amazing stretch goals. The book has reached, just a wonderful level of backing already. It is fully funded. I think one of the first stretch goals has already been reached, but there's more out there. So if you've not yet had the opportunity to fund Beyond the Mirror Image Volume 3, go do so. There's going to be some incredible information in there about the comics, the novels, all these sorts of things. Some of the unproduced material as well. There's some really, really cool stuff that Matt has uncovered that I am not at liberty to say anything about, but he has uncovered some really cool stuff that book is going to have in it. And if for whatever reason you're not in a place to be able to back the Kickstarter right now or whatever, totally cool. The book will be available in the future. This is just the way to get it right away and to get, all the bells and whistles. So all that said, I think it is definitely time for me to get out of here because quite frankly, now I'm going to go edit this episode and put it together and put it on the YouTube, because that's how the sausage gets made sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to thank everyone so much for all the support, and again for all the new follows. It means so much to me. It really does. This has been an incredible creative outlet for me, a source of a lot of joy, and I just really, really appreciate the fact that people are enjoying it and deriving some of that as well, because it holds meaning for me, and the fact that it seems to hold meaning for other folks is incredibly validating. So thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support, your listenership, your engagement, the comments, the questions, whenever we get the chance to chat. It's awesome. So thank you all so much, regardless of whether you just clicked play for the first time. If you're a subscriber to the channel, which if you're not, just hit the subscribe button. Just do it. Do it. You can turn the notifications off. You never even have to come back if you don't want to. Just hit subscribe anyway. That helps. Leave a comment below. If you have a question for Brian or something like that, leave a comment below. Maybe we'll be able to get to it. If you have a question for me, if there's something you want to see on the show that I've not yet done, or that I could maybe do again, that you think I could do better, which is probably quite a lot, feel free to let me know. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. So thank you all so much, whether it's your first time or your 100th time, or I believe your 238th time. I think that's how many episodes we've done. Not on YouTube, but in the audio realm. So yeah, that's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it. And if you want to support the show financially, you can head over to Patreon and become a patron of the show. Get lots of cool benefits, including the behind-the-scenes videos with JJ Lindell on the creation of his posters. The first one is already up for Secret History, and there's going to be another one very soon for the Daleks poster that he's done, which you kind of maybe have sort of seen, but not really. Even if you think you've seen it, you haven't seen it. So it's going to be cool to talk about that process. And I look forward to hanging out with JJ tomorrow and talking about Doctor Who, which is something that I love to do and I don't get the chance to do as often as I would like. So yeah, in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Stay safe out there. And remember, always, always leap responsibly.